Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to our virtual classroom. Let's go ahead and get started. Today, our goal was just to practice how to graph inequalities, how to graph the solution of inequalities. And so let's just get right into it. This is found in OneNote, obviously. It is called, so if you go to second 9 weeks work, scroll down to graphing inequalities. I do want you guys to show your work on your notebook. So whatever you see me writing here with my ink is what you're writing in your notebook. I do want you to show your work. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want you to post a picture of your completed work here onto OneNote. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. So let's go with number 1. And in number 1, we see the inequality x is less than 1. So our goal, guys, is to match this inequality with one of these 9 different number lines. Just like from 10 through 18, we're going to match these with one of these 9 over here. So if you have an inequality here, 1 through 9, you're not going to find it over here. For 10 through 18, you're not going to find it over here. Okay, so it's just the ones right here on each side. You can almost think of this as 2 different worksheets. Okay, so for number 1, x is less than 1. What does that actually mean? Remember that x is a variable. Okay, so x can be any number as long as it meets this condition, as long as that number is less than 1. That's what this means. So obviously x cannot be 1, it cannot be 2 or 3, but it can be 0 or -1 or -2. And the way that I'm going to show that is I'm going to draw a number line. And yes, I want you to draw a number line too. And it's not going to take a long time, just do a line. And let's focus on the number 1 here. So here's 0, here's 1, and here's 2. That should be good enough. And so here we're focusing on number 1, right? And x can be any number as long as it's less than number 1. So therefore, x can be any number that is less than, so to the left of number 1. Okay, that's the first part. Now, I'm going to do an open circle right here at number 1. All right, because x cannot be equal to number 1. That might seem odd to some of you guys, but let's go ahead and do number 2 before we even answer and show which of these number lines is number 1. Let's go ahead and do number 2 to see why we're doing an open circle here. So number 2 shows x is less than or equal to, notice how there's a line below that. X is less than or equal to 1. So in this case, ladies and gentlemen, x can be any number as long as that number is less than 1 or equal to 1. So it's 1 and everything below 1. So it's a little bit different. So we're going to draw a number line that's going to look very similar. Here's 0, here's 1, here's 2. And again, we're going to focus on the number 1 right here. And again, x can be anything that is less than 1. So I'm going to go to the left of 1 because to the left numbers get smaller. And it can also be 1. So I'm going to do a shaded in circle. I'm going to shade in the number 1 to show that it could be 1 or anything below. So notice the difference between numbers 1 and 2. Both of them, we are looking at x to be less than 1. However, number 2, this line, anytime you have a line means that it can also be equal to that number. So anytime you have a line, you're going to do a closed shaded in circle. If there is no line, it's always going to be an open circle. So from this, I'm going to look at these. I'm going to focus on number 1 for number 1. So here I'm going to look at all the number 1s. So you notice all the number 1s. And we're looking for the one with an open circle on number 1 and then everything shaded to the left of that. Okay, so here it's at number 1, but it's a closed circle. That's not what I'm looking for. Here again, it's starting on number 1 and it is going in the right direction, but it is closed again. That is not what I'm looking for. Here we have an open circle on number 1. Okay. And it's going to the left. That is exactly what I'm looking for. Ladies and gentlemen, the answer to number 1 is D. D is the right answer. I know my lame jokes. All right, so for number 2, very similar, except that while it's also shaded to the left, we want a closed circle because x can also be equal to 1. So here we see that I has a closed circle. It is the number 1 is shaded in, and it's going to the left. Therefore, the answer to number 2 is I. So I am going to write the letter I right here. I am right. Cool. Let's go ahead and do number 3. So for number 3, notice how all of these are focusing on number 1, just so that you can see how the different symbols will affect the number line. So for number 3, this time it says that x can be greater than 1. X can be any number as long as that number is greater than 1. Okay, so it cannot be equal to 1, just greater than 1. So I'm going to do a number line again, starting here at 0. Here's 1, here's 2. And I'm going to focus on number 1. And x can be anything that is greater than 1, not including 1. So I'm going to do an open circle on 1. I'm not including the number 1. So I'm going to do an open circle at 1. All right. So let's go and find the number line that has an open circle at 1 and is shaded to the right of it. So open circle, we already used this one, open circle, and here it is. We have an open circle right at 1, and then it's shaded to the right. Ladies and gentlemen, the answer to number 3 is G. Excellent. And I realize I'm going a little bit fast, but that's because I can't field your questions. And so I recommend that if you're a little lost, just restart this video and just watch it again and watch it slowly and see if it makes more sense. Watch it with a parent. Maybe that's going to make more sense. Let's go ahead and do number 4. For number 4, now it says that x, again, is greater than or equal to 1. So again, x can be any number as long as that number is greater than or it's equal to 1. So here's my number line, as I want you to draw your number lines too. Here's 0, here's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. As long as the number 1 is there, that's fine. I'm going to focus on number 1, and x can be any number as long as that number is greater than 1 or equal to 1. So I'm going to shade in the number 1. And I can see that y here is shaded in on number 1 and it includes any number greater than 1. So the answer to number 4 is y. Why? Because I said so. Awesome. All right. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and do number 5. Now look closely at number 5, though, because 5 introduces another symbol that we barely touched on in our previous lesson, which is that x is not equal. Notice how it's an equal sign, but it's crossed out, meaning it's not equal to 1. In other words, x can be any number as long as that number is not equal to 1. All right, so again, we're always focusing on x, and then the inequality symbol tells us the condition. So number 4, x can be any number as long as it's greater than or equal to 1. Number 3, x can be any number as long as it's greater than 1. 2, x can be any number as long as it's less than or equal to 1. Here on number 5, x can be any number as long as that number is not equal to 1. In other words, if I have a number line here, and here's my number 1, x can be any number that is greater than 1 or less than 1, as long as it is not equal to 1. So I'm going to do an open circle on 1, right at 1, to show me it cannot be that number. It's not going to touch that number. That is the one number that I'm going to avoid. So looking at that, I can see that the clear answer to that is A. Notice how everything is shaded above 1, below 1, yet not including 1. So the answer to 5 is A. I hope that that is useful. Let me do one with a negative number just to show you that the pattern is still the same. Here, let's look at number 6. Number 6. Number 6, even if we start at a negative number, notice how it says x is less than negative 2. So x can be any number as long as it is less than negative 2. All right, so let's do a number line. Let's find negative 2. So here's 0. Negative numbers are to the left of 0. So here's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, sure, negative 4. And so x, again, as long as it is less than negative 2. So here's negative 2. And then the numbers that are less than negative 2 go to the left. So it's going to go to the left of 2 because that's how they get smaller. It's less than negative 2. and it cannot equal -2. There's no line under it, so I'm going to do an open circle. So again, as you can see, anytime there is a line under it, the equal sign is going to be a closed shaded in circle, as I see in number 2 and number 4. But in numbers like number 3 and number 6, notice how there is no line under it. It cannot equal it. It's always going to be an open circle. So 6, we're going to look at -2, open circle, shaded to the left. And that is H, open circle. So the answer number 6 would be H. Now, the last problem that I want to go through with you guys is actually number 11. If you look at number 11, notice how it says -1. So this is number 11. It says -1 is less than X. Now, even though it's backwards now, notice how we still need to focus on the X. In other words, X can be any number as long as it's greater than -1. All right? Or -1 is going to be less than whatever value X is. You can turn it around as long as X is greater. So X, notice that the inequality symbol is going to face the X. X is greater than -1. We're saying the same thing. X is greater than -1. X can be any number as long as it's greater than -1. Either way works. So for my number line, I'm doing a line. I'm going to make sure I include the number -1. So here's -1, here's -2, and X can be any number, and here's +1. X can be any number as long as it's greater than -2, than -1. So here's -1. X can be any number that is greater than -1, not including -1 because it doesn't have a line. So it's going to be an open circle. So I can see that the answer is N because look, open circle at -1, any number greater than -1. And that's pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you found this video helpful. As you can see, hopefully it's not difficult. If you're finding it difficult, it's because you're not understanding something. But again, I hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you next time.